After foraging for Pokemon in the early route area, you, alongside your friends Seren and Cecil, arrive in Renaissance City. Seren's excited to learn about the best battle strategies, while Cecil wants to read more about the fabled mist of the region.
Let's head to the Pokemon Center to rest for a bit.
Not to alarm you both, but who's the person in the sunglasses?
In front of the Pokemon Center stands an adult wearing sunglasses, but who this adult is depends on the version. They introduce themselves either way. In Pokemon Myth, it's a man called Maddock. In Pokemon Legend, it's a woman called Gwen. They figured you're all first-timers, and decided to save you some time searching for the item they give you, which I'll elaborate on in a bit. But first, welcome back to the Kelot region, my Fakemon region based on Wales. And for the record, don't expect these narrative segments to become a regular thing. It might be a while until the next video that has one. In this video, I'm going to explain the gimmick for the region. In case you don't know what a gimmick is, it's a term Pokemon fans gave to mechanics of Mega Evolution, Z-moves, Dynamax, and Terastalisation. Essentially, it's the fifth option when you select a move, which alters the battle in a unique way. Long-term fans of mine may already know that I tried and failed to develop a gimmick for my last Fakemon region. But this time it was easy. Before I get into any more, why not become a long-term fan yourself by subscribing? Only a fraction of you are actually subscribed, so why not change that? It'll help me in the ever-tumultuous YouTube algorithm. So Kelot's gimmick is called the Fabled Mist. To save a long story for another video, the short version is that the Box Legends got cursed by a Pokemon, which would have destroyed the region. The region was spared by another Pokemon, which caused the Fabled Mist to start occurring, and for the Box Legends to be eternally linked to it. Pokemon who are exposed to this mist become much stronger. In fact, their powers are comparable to legendary and mythical Pokemon now. This is also the reason legendary and mythical Pokemon will not be affected by the gimmick mechanics-wise. This is what Cecil, your friend from Kanto, came to the Kelot region to study. Maddock or Gwen, depending on the version, would tell you all of this. They would also give you all a Fabled necklace. This gives you the ability to summon Fabled Mist at will. It's based on Celtic bracelets, necklaces, bangles, and other items that are traditionally worn. It also shows the symbol of the region, which is actually the Fabled Mist symbol. I designed this symbol myself based on the Triskele symbol, traditionally used within Celtic cultures. Perhaps not exclusively, but it's so prevalent that a variant is used on the flag of the Isle of Man. Pretty much every important trainer in the region will either have one as well, or something else incorporated into their clothing, like a Mega Ring from Gen 6. Now you may have noticed that this cutscene is after the first route. You might be thinking, that is very early. Well, you see, Fabled Mist doesn't just make your Pokemon as strong as a legendary, it makes all Pokemon on the battlefield as strong as a legendary, giving you equal chances of winning. This would also raise the Pokemon's BST to around 600, and would do so by proportionally scaling each stat. So for example, Shuckle is probably going to move last. So maybe a Sunkern can defeat an Arcanine. Also, once it's summoned, it doesn't go away until the battle is over. Every Mon will be given this buff for the remainder of the battle. As you can see, universally fair, yet still with elements of strategy. Prior stat changes would be unaffected, of course. The whole gimmick is about strategy after all. But, as you can see in the thumbnail, certain Pokemon would gain new forms. This would kinda be like how all Pokemon could Dynamax, but certain Pokemon could Gigantamax. They would also be temporary, much like Gmax forms. Pokemon don't just enter their Fabled form without finding one in raid battles, which you can find in the overworld, which appear as clouds of mist. Another way a Pokemon can enter this form while entering the Fabled mist is this. This is a story. It looks like a book. Essentially, you read this to your Pokemon. In-game, you just select a particular story, i.e. a Raichu story. And if there's a compatible Pokemon in your party, i.e. a Pichu, Pikachu, or Raichu that hasn't read the Raichu story yet, then you get to select it. The story is read, and now they can enter their Fabled form when in the Fabled Mist. Along with a Fabled necklace, you, Seren, and Cecil will receive the story pertaining to your starter, by Maddock in Pokemon Myth and Gwen in Pokemon Legend. These are the only stories that will receive special art, or at least the only ones I'll commission special art for. In-game, you will also have a tutorial on how to use this mechanic. Maddock or Gwen, depending on the version, would guide yourself and Seren in a battle you'll have, which will be activated like all other gimmicks in 3D Pokemon.
Whoa! My partner Pokemon feels way stronger! This is a wild way to battle!
Anyways, once you've read your starter's story to it, what will their Fabled forms look like? I got an artist astray to do the Fabled forms for Kelot's starters. If you want to know about the design origins for their base forms, with art done by Kai Fakemon's R, check out my video covering them. Something you may notice is that their eyes do the same wispy thing as the box legends. This will be a motif with all Fabled forms. Something else I wanted to do is make them all look like they could be legendary Pokemon, but still looking like the Pokemon they are forms of. I also wanted to loosely base them all on mythology. Not Welsh mythology in specific, mainly so that I could have more variety in the designs. That being said, I did keep the Kelot starters Celtic themed. Starting with Bakiro, I based its Fabled form on Tyrannus, the Celtic god of thunder. Since Bakiro is an electric type, it made sense to use it. The primary design feature added is the wheels on its feet. Tyrannus is heavily associated with wheels, and the whole reason I made Bakiro is because of horse and cart tramways. So wheels, especially where they are located. Ballerina has its Fabled form based on Tutates, a tribal god in Celtic folklore. His name even derives from the Proto-Celtic word for tribe. Tribes across the world tend to be associated with their respective dances. Tutates specifically is associated with Roman rings, which have TOT inscribed on them. This is due to these letters being conjectured to be the abbreviated form of the name Tutates. I wanted to reference these rings, so Ballerina's Fabled form spins rings of fire around its limbs, where you'd expect these rings to appear. Its hair references the flowers and bushes used during Beltane, a Celtic celebration. They're used because they look like fire. And finally, Closer has its Fabled form based on Asus, or Isus. I'll just keep saying Asus, with the main addition being the claws looking more like axes. Asus is associated with axes, so this is why this was done. Yes, we had to sacrifice the hook claw for this, but this form changes body proportions anyways. The rest of this design is a simple extension of the base design, like the others, although now you can see a bubble cape behind it, and horned epaulets on its shoulders made of bubbles. All of this makes it look more menacing, like a pirate and like a dark type. Now, you might have noticed a design element they share. They all add circular things to their design. Now, I know that sounds simple, but these circular elements reference the gods they're based on. The wheels of Tyrannus for Bakiro, the rings of Tutates for Ballerina, and the axes of Asus for Closer, although the artist and I took liberties with what kind of axe to adhere to this circular theme. Three gods in question are also associated with one another, as they were mentioned in the epic poem Pharsalia by Roman poet Lucan. It is mentioned in the epic that Celts offered human sacrifices to these gods. I would normally not go into detail, but they're strangely relevant, so a bit of a trigger warning for methods of death. Sacrifices to Asus involved tying the person to a tree and flogging them to death. Sacrifices to Tyrannus involved burning the person to death. And sacrifices to Tutates involved drowning the person. Human sacrifice talk over. So now back to talking about wacky creatures suitable for children. Weirdly, these methods of sacrifice thematically link to the grass, fire, and water types, although which god represented by which type is a bit scrambled. Just thought it would be interesting to mention. So that's the Kelot starters, but you saw Kanto starters in the thumbnail, so I'm going to talk about them. The remaining Fabled forms in this video were done by Fungus Fakemon, also known as Nani Nani. The Kelot ones didn't change type, but the Kanto starters all will. To clarify how this works, the stories will also provide each Pokemon with additional moves in their moveset to learn, which will utilise their new type. And yes, Kanto starters. Both times there's been a form-changing gimmick, they received one. At least here they will not be on any important trainer's team, and will only be obtained in the post-game. The Pokemon Company may decide not to give the Kanto starters these sorts of forms in the future, but I wanted to, because I feel like they'd be a good template to explain to artists, and you the viewers of course, the design philosophy of the Fabled forms. Let's get Charizard out of the way, because a significant portion of you don't want to think about it for too long. Charizard is probably one of my favourite Pokemon personally, so any comment about it getting too many forms will make me personally sad. Anyways, it will replace flying with Dragon. But DrEevee! Charizard already got a Fire Dragon form in Mega Charizard X. My response to this is, look at it. Do they look at all similar besides the fact it is a Charizard? No, I didn't think so. Anyways, instead of a Western dragon, it is based on an Eastern dragon, taking particular influence from dragons in Chinese culture, which aren't typically associated with fire. Not that all aren't, but they're usually representative of other elements. Fabled Charizard is a fire type because I did want to keep the starter types from the starters. In fact, every Fabled form will be a dual type and will keep at least one of the types from the original Pokemon. I wanted the design to be representative of all elements, hence the colourful fire, and white is the primary colour. Its representation of all the elements isn't just represented through its colour scheme, or through the dragon typing, but its noodle body is posed in the shape of a lemniscate. which is the name of the shape used for the infinity symbol. Anyways, let's stop talking about one of the greatest starter Pokemon of all time, with 2 of the coolest Megas, and one of the coolest GMAX forms, as well as a cool shiny, and let's talk about the best choice of starter in the Kanto games, Venusaur. Poison is replaced by Ghost here. This is because the regular form of Venusaur has a corpse flower on it, and frogs are associated with death in mythologies around the world. There's not really anything more about this Venusaur, much like with Blastoise, which is now Water Steel, type which people wanted it to be. I wanted to emphasise the cannons, which appear to be made of metal. I also loosely based some of its appearance on a Tarrasque, a French legend that's essentially a spiky turtle dragon with a lion's head and a serpent's tail. I don't really have much else to say about these two. I mentioned Raichu earlier, and it gets a Fabled Form too, and I based it on Gorochu, and I made it Electric Dark. Gorochu, for those who don't know, was the proposed evolution to Raichu that was cut during Gen 1's development. Remember, Pichu wasn't a thing yet. I love Pichu and I wouldn't want to give it up for any reason, including with Gorochu. That being said, Gorochu did look pretty cool. I like the idea that Gorochu was its own myth within the Pokemon world. Even though I can't find a source for what Gorochu's type was going to be, and Dark didn't exist in Gen 1, I decided to make Fabled Raichu Electric Dark because of its more bestial appearance. And there we have it, 7 new Fabled forms your Pokemon can get when in the Fabled Mist. Would this affect your starter choice? Are there any Pokemon you'd want to see get a form with this gimmick? Leave all your thoughts in the comments below. Now, let's get back to our adventurers.
Stick! This story and next will really change the game for me. I can't wait to use this on my way to become champion. Time to train up and read the story to my partner Pokemon. See ya, besties!
Part of the reason I came to Kelot was to research what Fabled Mist does to Pokemon. It might even get me out of tight spots with those giants as well. Feel free to be my research partner, Alice.
The adult wasn't able to stop your friends, but tells you why they're talking to you. Their best friend has gone missing, and they know it's got something to do with these new facilities dotted throughout the region, which they point to you on your map. They intend on investigating. They have a feeling you would be able to help. They must go now, but they'll see you there. Which path will you start first? There will be videos covering them, eventually. Leave your thoughts and predictions in the comments below, and I will see you next time.